Hello, welcome back to the channel. So this is kind of something that I've felt for a while now, which is that Star Rail is kind of at the point where it is like almost impossible for the game to be balanced. And I think that is for just a couple of reasons. One is just the game constantly trying to one-up itself in terms of like the power of characters, which I do think really started with like Acheron, because I do think Acheron really like set like a new like bar for power of like what characters can do. And the devs have just been trying to constantly one up that power. I mean, we just got Final, and it was probably like the most broken character in the entire game, which I do think does make sense to a certain extent. I mean, most of like the big hype characters that we have gotten have like a similar ult mechanic to Aggron, where they need like a certain amount of charges to get the ultimate instead of having like a bar like most other characters do. Now, I don't think that new characters being strong is necessarily a problem, since it does generate more hype, and let's be honest, playing strong characters is just fun. Like, that it is. Like, you can't tell me it's not. I mean, I have, like, used Casper so much since he came out. However, I think that the problem with it is the amount of broken characters we have been getting, compared to, like, a lot of, like, buffed characters or 4-stars, because 2 whole patch cycles to get 4 characters buffed is just way too slow compared to, like, how many characters we're actually getting, because we're getting 2 5-stars every single patch. Now, obviously, the buffs did definitely help those characters a lot and make them way better than they were before. You know, people like Blade and So Wolf actually pretty good now, but every patch has just been giving us more and more broken characters than the last, and a lot of the older characters are just falling farther and farther behind, especially a lot of the 1.0 characters. And it also doesn't help that we aren't really getting that many events, so you can't even really get that much currency to try and get all of these 5-stars in the first place. Now, I do think that some of the power is a bit overblown, and I do think part of the problem is just the community's actual perception of how bad characters actually are. Because it does feel like a lot of people think that a character is either like S tier, like broken level, or is garbage, which is just not true at all. Like, characters like Fei Xiao, or Firefly, or like Boot Hill, or Jinyuan, or most of like the 2.0 characters are still good. Like, they can still beat most of the content. They just like aren't as good as some of the more recent characters are now. Like, I think the problem with them more so has to do with just MOC being really outdated and just being kind of badly designed, to be honest. And MOC more so just favors a lot of the newer characters. But even then, when we do get a character that is just like good but not like broken, people will still complain and be like, oh, this character's garbage. And it's like, no. Like, I saw so many people when Cypher came out say that Cypher is bad, which she is not at all bad. She is very good. She just isn't like broken level of good, like someone like Tribby or something is. Which I do think part of the reason why people think a lot of characters are worse than they actually are is because of zero cycling being like the standard for how good a character actually is, which I do think it can help determine like if a character is broken level, but I said this in many videos, and I will say it again here. Zero cycling does not matter at all for the average player. The only thing that matters for the average player is, can you get all of the stars in the content? If you can, then it's fine. Like, and I think that most of the like 2.8 characters and even some of the 1.8 characters can do that. I think it's mainly just a lot of the, like I said, a lot of the 1.8 characters, like, you know, Sealy, for example, that do really struggle because they're just kind of outdated. Now, is it harder for characters like Firefly than it was before? Yes, absolutely. But they aren't like unplayable like some people seem to think that they are. So I feel like the game is in like this weird spot where like the power ceiling is so high that if a character isn't like at that ceiling, then people think that they're bad. Now, I do think that part of the problem is just like the design of MOC, because it's just so outdated. Like, you can tell it is one of the first modes they made. The actual like mechanics of it have like barely changed since launch. The only thing that doesn't even like consistently change is what buff it is, which is usually favored towards the new character, and the enemies. And, you know, the thing that most people talk about, which is the health. Which I kind of go back and forth a lot on the whole, like, health thing, because on the one hand, it does make sense that health would go up as the game gets older, and players get better at the game, and, you know, they get stronger builds. But on the other hand, it's starting to feel like an artificial way to, like, increase the difficulty. I feel like the bosses we have been getting don't have unique mechanics. You know, like Nicodora like steals a part of your health and has like the whole war armor thing. Flame Reaver has this like collect shadows that you need to kill. Pollux can like set you to 1 HP. And Aquila has the whole like heat gauge thing. So it's not like the HP is the only thing that has been changing. But I feel like a lot of the mechanics do kind of get overshadowed by the feeling of you just like hitting a brick wall over and over again until it dies. Like, it feels like the HP is just so obnoxious. Like, I think there should be like a good middle ground where the bosses feel like they have enough HP to feel like an actual battle, but not to the point where it just feels obnoxious to play against, you know? Which I think is where we're kind of hitting right now. I do also think part of the problem is just the buffs being like too relevant, because they obviously should feel like, you know, you want to play around them, but they shouldn't be so necessary that it just feels awful if you can't interact with them because you just don't have the characters. Now, you know, like I said, I don't think Starl will ever be truly balanced. Like, there's always going to be characters that are bad and some characters that are broken. But what do I think can be done to at least make it feel better to play than it currently does? One is just more character buffs in general, because the current pace is just not enough. Two is give us more 4 stars. Like, how are we going into 3.5 and still not having a 4-star? We're basically going a whole year since the last time we got a 4-star was in 2.5. They don't even need to be from Amphorius, just like anything, come on, man. But if the devs really want to only just do 5 stars, I think that they can either make more alternate forms in place of 4 stars, just so, you know, give people more free options and also sort of buff older characters at the same time, or give us more rewards, basically just more events and stuff, so it's more feasible for people to be able to get those 5 stars. Problem is that we have neither. Like, either one of those I think will be fine. 3 is to overhaul MOC. The other 2 modes I think are fine, though I do think they could maybe use a bit of tweaking. MOC I do think needs like a full rework, kind of like what Pure Fiction got. Maybe make it so that you can pick between the 3 buffs instead of just one. So that, like, you know, one of them is favored towards the new character and the other 2 is like something else. Maybe also have different options for fights on the higher floors. So like if your characters aren't good against a certain boss, like Ule, for example, you can pick a different boss to fight. I think this will mainly be good on like floor like 11 and 12. I think the other floors wouldn't really need it. This could also maybe be a thing for Apocalyptic Shadow as well, but I do think that MOC would need it more, at least right now. Just literally anything to make MOC feel better to play. Because it's probably like the worst mode in the game right now, I'm gonna be honest. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think the game is in a fine spot. Like, I don't think the game is like dying or anything, especially with 3.4 being so hyped for a lot of people, mainly just because of the story. But I think that's the main thing, right? I think most people are playing the game now mainly for the story, and I think the combat has kind of taken a backseat to that, and the balance has just gotten like even worse than it already was in the first place. So I think the combat overall is just kind of suffering a bit because of that. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.